That's right, the Final Fantasy series has a litany of bosses and major antagonists. And, well, they all seem to aim to enact some form of mass omnicide and kill literally everything and everyone you know. However, I want to ask, which Final Fantasy villains are actually good? Not in the moral sense, because again, they are performing mass genocide, but I mean in the way of which ones actually have a good drive, a raison d'etre, a reason to kill everyone. So, I'm going to be separating the Sephiroths from the Sephiroths. Okay, that's enough. I cannot be bothered to keep keying this. Now then, firstly, you might be thinking, Chris, what makes you a good judge of what makes a good character? It's because I'm the greatest character of them all. I'm not real. I don't even exist. I am the no man. Secondly, I'm only going to be focusing on the main numbered games. Sorry, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. No one cares about you. I'm also only going to be covering the main antagonists. So, sorry, 4 Archfiends. No one cares. Also, no last minute bosses or like last minute super mega bosses. Like Necron. Ta-ta! And then finally, although I really shouldn't have to be saying this, spoilers ahead for like everything. Again, who would have thought I shouldn't have to explain it. Starting with Final Fantasy 1, we've got Garland, who cuts up an impressive figure. Oh. He was once a loyal knight to the kingdom of Cornelia, but one day decided that I'm evil now, and therefore kidnaps the Princess of Cornelia. You and your party of 4 white mages eventually track him down in a cave just down the road and ultimately slay him. Hooray, the day is saved. However, the power that he gained from the darkness of the 4 Archfiends that are also around, he manages to send himself back in time, therefore he can then somehow use his magic that he's gotten from the 4 Archfiends to send those 4 Archfiends forward in time so that they can give them the dark power to send him back in time so that he can send them forward in time to then give him the dark power to send himself back in time to send him the Archfiends forward in time to send him. Unsurprisingly, this ultimately turns him into the physical embodiment of chaos itself. Why? It doesn't matter because he's dead now! Hooray, you did it! Honestly, other than weird convoluted time travel, time loop nonsense, he just becomes evil out of nowhere, kidnaps the princess. That's a Sephiroth if you ask me. Next up we've got Final Fantasy II, which is a terrible game with some really weird mechanics, but it does mean we have Emperor Matthias, his friends just call him the Emperor, and well, he looks more like a weird butterfly crossed with a puppeteer. The Emperor of the Kingdom of Palamecia, turns out he once made a pact with literally Satan and therefore became hell-bent on world domination. Kills a lot of people, as you often do when you've got an army of demons from your satanic pact, but ultimately is killed in his giant cyclone fort. Plot twist though, whilst he's in actual hell, he punches Satan in the face and is like, I'm the new Satan now, mother. He rises from the dead and continues to try and invade the world to kill everyone. Becoming corrupted by evil, defeating the source of that evil to reclaim your own evilness. This may sound pretty Sephiroth if you ask me. However, compared to others later on in this video, he's more of a Sephiroth if you ask me. Purely because he's just kind of evil for the sake of being evil. Final Fantasy III is an even more terrible game, but we do have Zand, Master Zand. He's got a master's degree in being a mage. He's a super powerful archmage that was given the gift of mortality, which is less so of a gift and more of an existential nightmare, because I lie awake each night thinking about my own mortality all the time, and oh god, I am wasting my life and will one day die. Because everyone thinks dying sucks, he decides to freeze time itself by shrouding the entire world in darkness, which kind of splits the whole world in two, and one area where Xand lives is frozen time. Hooray, he'll live forever. The other half isn't, and Xand fears that these people who live on this other half of the world will rise up and overthrow him to kind of see what's going on. Why is the world having a bad time? So he sends fiends after them to basically keep them in check. Eventually he is stopped, because that is how stories progress. So he decides to destroy the other two crystals of the world to try and repeat the process. Put the other half of the world into a time-stopped world where he won't die. Oh god, we're all going to die of old age. I'm so old. However, a constant fear of your own mortality and an awareness that every second spent is another second wasted, that each moment is just another tick, tick, tick away into your eventual demise, and that you could be doing something with your life, anything, just rebelling against life, making a name for yourself, living. That's hot. This does lead us though to the Cloud of Darkness, who is a sexy lady. Turns out she's like a primordial force of the world itself, and was actually controlling Xand, because when the world is like kind of corrupted enough, the primordial Cloud of Darkness comes out and destroys everything to reset the world. But that's only meant to be when the world is in a state of imbalance. However, the primordial cloud itself was kind of manipulating Xand to force him to corrupt the world so that it could then cleanse the world of the corruption that it itself caused? What? That's a Sephiroth knot if you ask me. Final Fantasy IV seizes with Golbez, Theodore Golbez, who is a masterful, powerful sorcerer who is trying to harness the power of the crystals to summon the Giant of Babel, which is this sort of all-powerful destruction giant that will ultimately, like always, wipe out all life on Earth. But what leads this imposing figure to kill everyone? Whew, it's a bit of a doozy. So, Golbez, a young Golbez Theodore Golbez, was the child of a Lunarian, a man from the moon, and a human. And this moon man once taught everyone around him how to use magic. However, one day, sadly, the people around him kind of killed the moon man, Golbez's father, which made him a bit sad because, oh god, humans are horrible and they are monsters who cannot be trusted. However, his mother eventually dies giving childbirth to her son, who is Cecil, Golbez's Theodore Golbez's brother, which kind of drives him even more insane because now literally everything he knew and loved is dead. He blames Cecil internally for killing his last remaining family. Humanity itself is a curse. And to top it all off, as he's lying there dying of being stabbed repeatedly by people stood in a line, he's like, oh no, I just wish that humanity could forgive me for summoning a giant mass killing machine that kind of almost killed literally everyone on the planet. It's a bit of a stretch, you know, to forgive him, but at least he's trying. So, this is all pretty hot if you ask me. However, all of this is ruined because of Zemus. Turns out that Zemus, another moon man, was controlling Golbez, Theodore Golbez, the entire time. He harnessed the power of the child's naivety, hate, and told him that he was an insect burst from womb of dragon's corpse, are you? So all of that hot, raw, emotional hate of vengeance and hating humanity was all kind of for naught, because ultimately he was just being controlled and brainwashed by a man on the moon, another moon man, which is Sephiroth, really. You have no control over your own actions? Get out of here. Zemus, however, the big Raven goth he is another story. He is a moon man from the moon, which is apparently another planet Although, oh no, that planet is dying. He is but of one of his entire species who is like, you see that planet down there? Why don't we just kill them all and take their planet? Which is a bit of a red flag, yes, but everyone else was like, nah, we're just gonna sleep forever and hope that maybe one day they can learn to just get along with us. That turned out pretty well. Moon Man number 1 died. So, everyone was put into sleep. Zemus was put into some sort of weird mega psychic prison because he was a bit evil talking about killing everyone, but he broke out with his mind powers and ultimately used it to control Theodore Golbez to try and kill everyone, all for the sake of his own planet and his own species. He was driven to these levels of genocide, omnicide of an entire planet's worth of people, purely just to try and save his own people, the only people he knew and cared about. Yet, he did kind of kill everyone and also ruin what was actually a really good story with Golbez. But that's pretty Sephiroth. Final Fantasy V, which is actually really fun by the way, sees us with Exdeath, who looks a lot like Golbez, but cooler because he's got more like spikes and stuff, and spikes are cool, you know? Long ago, humanity made a like dark forest, which with the intent of just putting all the evil spirits there, just like, oh god, these are a bit of a hassle, just put them all in the evil dark forest, which they did. However, a tree grew, and not just any ordinary tree, it was an evil tree that just kept on sucking in all the evil souls, and ultimately, Exdeath was born, who is like a warlock birthed from a tree, or is a tree. He's like a tree wizard, and he's like evil because he's just entirely made out of evil spirits. He goes on a big conquest to disrupt the crystals and kill the worlds so that he can like bring forth the void, the state of nothingness, the nothingness that he came from. He can bring it back to, I don't know, look at it and go, that is where I came from. Everything must return to nothingness. Which he almost does, but ultimately, obviously, he loses. However, as cool as his backstory is, of being this big tree wizard, birthed from a tree, wanting to just bring everything to a state of nothingness, for the sake of nothingness, existence is nothingness, everything is pointless in life. Despite all that, his entire motive is just that he was like, the reason he's evil is because he's just evil spirits. That's not very hot, that's a Sephiroth. I'm sorry, Exdeath, I love you, but you don't have a good motive. With Final Fantasy VI, we've got a fan favourite, being Kafka, who is a 35-year-old man. Let that sink in. Kafka is an evil and malicious and cruel man, and dresses like a clown. He's second in command to the Gestalt Empire, and like the right-hand man of the Emperor himself, and dresses like a clown. He commits numerous war crimes throughout the entire game, poisoning wells, poisoning rivers and water sources, and just killing everyone en masse without mercy. And dresses like a clown. Now you might be thinking, what drove the man to dress like a clown and also commit mass acts of genocide? Well, long ago, Kafka was actually a sort of science experiment gone wrong. The Gestalt Empire wanted to create like magic soldiers by giving normal humans the power of magic so they could be like really powerful and kill a lot of people, possibly dressed like clowns. It works. Kafka has magic abilities, but it also drove him insane because he was experimented on so mercilessly and so ruthlessly that he kind of lost his mind in the process. So he serves the Empire for a long period of time, but has his own goals, which is to kill everyone because he suffered so much. And that's kind of it. In his pursuit of murder and killing of everyone, he finds what is called the Warring Triad, which is like the source of all magic, and he takes it into himself to become literally the god of magic itself, the god of the world basically, and uses his powers to just kill indiscriminately, doing what he does best, which is just keep on killing, reducing the world to nothing, because if he had to suffer so much, why doesn't everyone else die? Which I guess is kind of vaguely Sephiroth. Would you believe that we're only halfway through? Oh god, there's still so many games left, and this is where everything gets a lot more involved. Final Fantasy VII brings us to Sephiroth, who, do I really need to go through this? I literally named my entire scoring system after him. Surely it's pretty obvious. I'm going to go through it anyway. He was a soldier, like a super soldier in the Shinra army. They're an energy company, they've got an army, don't worry about it. He's like the greatest soldier that has ever lived. He's the most powerful military being seemingly on the planet itself, a war hero. However, one day he finds out that his life is a lie. He was actually a science experiment gone wrong again, and turns out that he was just like a weird test tube baby where he was injected with cells of Jenova, whom everyone thought was like this ancient being, one of the ancients, when it was actually just an evil, horrible invading alien. And finding out that his entire being is not what he thought it was, seeing these other horrible creatures of what he may have been, what he could be, he goes mad and gets a god complex, viewing himself as the last, or one of the last of the ancients, the original inhabitants of the planet. He views humanity as a plague, ruining this planet which his mother, Jenova, left him. Therefore, he seeks to wipe out all life on the planet and become God and the planet itself by summoning the giant meteor to crash down and wound the planet so severely that when it's like healing itself, he'll stand in the middle of the big scab basically and be like, ah, I am the planet now, and then like fly through space and kill and invade other planets to become their new lord, because only he is able to look at the planets properly, because he is an ancient. He's not an ancient, he's a very naughty boy. Despite all this though, realizing that your own humanity and your birth was a lie, delusions of godhood, despising humanity itself for just what it's done to the planet, and wanting to cleanse the world of this plague, that's hot. That is Sephi hot, my friend. We're gonna skip through like the other 4 Final Fantasy VII installments because they're all basically just Sephiroth again, all inconsequential and boring characters, but also all of their backstories are basically Sephiroth. No one cares. Final Fantasy VIII has a lot of villains. Who's the villain in this one again? Ultimechia, who is another sorceress, but you might have thought, I thought Edea was like the main antagonist throughout the entire game. Yes, but also no, because it turns out the entire time she's being mind controlled by Ultimechia, Ultimate Mage Lady from the future. She uses an advanced machine to send her mind back in time to possess the minds of other sorceresses, to eventually hope to compress time itself into like a nothingness, zero, weird purgatory state where she herself is a god, so she won't die. Why? Although apparently the Final Fantasy VIII Ultimatum does say it's purely because she has this fear of this prophecy of dying to the legendary seed. Which is kind of actually okay and kind of hot if you ignore the weird eyeball boobs. However, none of this actually really ever comes up in the game. With Ultimechia, all you get is her compressing time itself, and you get this really cool like time travel moment where like you, Squall, and her like tumble through time back to like the orphanage when Squall's a child, and like ultimately Edea being possessed or like taking in the magical sorceress power of Ultimechia, thus allowing Ultimechia to possess Edea. However, at the same time, it gives Edea the idea to create the seeds, which ultimately leads to her own downfall of Ultimechia. So it's this weird kind of interesting and confusing like self-fulfilling prophecy where because of Ultimechia's actions it leads to her actions being thwarted because of her actions being thwarted. It's kind of cool, but it's also like 5 minutes in the game and it's not very interesting. It's a Sephiroth. Now we're on to Final Fantasy IX. Mwah. We'll start with Garland, who is this ancient android whose sole purpose is to just rebuild his home planet's world so that the people living there can live happily, because it turns out their entire planet was dying, basically. So, in his harebrained scheme of saving everyone, he merged his planet's crystal and like the home planet's crystal together, so so that over the thousands or hundreds of years, as Gaia's inhabitants all die, he plans to siphon their souls out of the life cycle of Gaia through the crystal and replace them with the souls of his home planet, Terra, the Terrans. Furthermore, he incited war between the various countries of Gaia in order to quicken up the speed of the souls being siphoned around. And using his angels of death, he sent them out into the world to furthermore increase the rate of everyone dying so that his people could live. And by doing what they've always done, which is going from world to world and like inverting it and converting it into their own planet. He's evil. He's an evil android who is like thousands of years old. He's been left with but one tortured task: to save his very people. And that's hot. Then we have Kuja, who has a metal jockstrap. Try not to look at it too much. Try not to look at it. Try not to look at it. Oh god, I'm looking at it! Kuja is a genome, which is this like doll-like creature created by Garland. However, in a unique twist of fate, Garland decides to give him free will, so that he could be an angel of death, but was deemed a failure. His sole purpose in life was to f it up and kill everyone. However, he didn't actually enjoy being labelled a failure, because who likes being called a failure by essentially your dad? So, as a sort of revenge thing, he kidnapped his brother, Zidane, who was another angel of death in the works, and ran and fled to Gaia to continue on with his nefarious killing of everyone. He manipulates countries into wars to kill thousands of people, all in the hopes of capturing and harnessing the power of the Eidolons, which are these, summons and all-powerful, great powerful creatures, just so he could kill his dad and take over the family business, basically. Eventually, Kuja manages to absorb enough souls into him that he gains the powers of emotion itself, and trance, which is this heightened emotional state where you become increasingly powerful. So powerful that finally Kuja has slain his father and he's finally gone his way. However, in the last moments, Garland reveals Kuja is going to die. The concept of ceasing to be in the world, existing without him, without his presence, and just going on as if he was nothing, as if he'd made no impact. This idea that he may not exist anymore and be nothing drives him mad, and therefore he opts to basically kill everyone, because if the world will live without him, then the world shall not live. He's driven by this existential fear of life itself being meaningless, of his entire existence amounting to nothing but a vague memory, if that. Kuja doesn't enact acts of evil because he is evil. He's like a child throwing a tantrum for acknowledgement, for everyone to witness him, to see him, to know that he exists. Sure, he is basically evil, but it comes from a will to live, this idea of living itself and to exist. He struggles against the notion of life itself. Is that not what we do every day of our lives? To try and carve out something that is inherently us in the world, to leave an imprint behind so that we can say, here I was, I existed and this was me, so the world itself will remember us, and just so to prove that our life was not meaningless. And this is what drives Kuja. He doesn't simply just wish to kill everything, he wishes to live life itself. He just simply wishes to be. And that is so Sephi hot. Even with the metal jockstrap. Oh god! Final Fantasy X sees us with Seymour, who also has a unique look to him. His backstory is that he's the son of like a Guado and a human as a sort of political sign of good faith, it didn't work because his father then exiled him and his mother to like a no man's land, where his mother basically just like kills herself to become this nightmare creature. So, having been exiled by his dad, his mum now looking like this, Seymour begins to turn, become a bit mentally unstable, because he's beginning to feel like, well, maybe life isn't actually worth much at all. However, he eventually returns back to Guadalsalem and kills his father to overthrow him as high priest, all in the notion so that he can enact his plan. Become Sin, the giant whale, and then kill everyone, because if the world is so full of sadness, if everyone were dead, then there would be no more sadness for everyone to feel, which has a logic to it, but also it's a bit of a leap. I fear this may be yet another Sephi mild, because yes, while his backstory is tragic, yeah, your father exiled you, your mother became a hell beast, boo-hoo, you don't hear me crying about it. It just seems like a bit of a weird leap to go from, oh, I had a bit of a shit upbringing, to I'm going to kill the entire world so that no one will feel sadness anymore, while being a giant whale. We then have Yevon, who is a surprise entry, not only because he basically looks like a weird bug, but because he's actually the entity that is controlling the giant whale. But you might be thinking, why would you surround yourself in a giant laser whale that keeps on killing everyone and mostly machines? Well, thousands of years ago, Zanarkand existed. It was this incredibly high-tech and advanced civilization where everyone was happy, lots of summoners were around, everyone played Blitzball, it was great. However, it was also at war with Bevelle, who were another city that primarily used technology. So they were invading, coming to destroy the shit out of Zanarkand, and Yevon, who was like the leader of this civilization, was like, I don't want people to die. So what he did was he converted everyone in Zanarkand into like a summon, into a faith, into a dream-like state where Zanarkand would exist on forever, but it exists inside Sin, the giant whale, and in a constant fear of like being found out and his dream world, his everything, his Zanarkand being destroyed. Sin goes around destroying any instances of machine and people to keep them at bay, just, you know, in a constant state of not quite thriving, so that they will never be able to rise up and potentially threaten his non-existent dream Zanarkand. It's a little Sephi hot, to be honest, because ultimately he's the leader of a country going to great lengths to protect his people, to save them from being destroyed by converting them into this weird simulation dream that exists inside a whale that has laser breath. Piss. Final Fantasy X-2 also exists. In which the main villain is Xiu Yin, who looks a lot like Tidus, which is important for basically no reason at all. He existed in the original Zanarkand, and his girlfriend, Len, was a powerful summoner who was called to the front lines in the big magic war. And he was a bit annoyed by this, so he manages to break in to Bevelle, where they've got Vegnagun, literally big gun, to try and stop the war by killing everyone. But he is ultimately like gunned down tragically in the last moments because it was never going to work, and he manages to tell Len that he loves her, but he dies before he hears her response, and he becomes this vengeful spirit, hell-bent on killing everyone because he's just really annoyed that his girlfriend dumped him, basically. He goes around possessing people, trying to get to the big gun to kill everyone again, because if his girlfriend dumped him, then everyone will die, which is a bit of a red flag. Just like, you know, let it go, man, Jesus. Ultimately, it's a Sephiroth because he just got dumped and that was it. That's his whole reason for killing everyone, is he didn't pay attention to his girlfriend and then he died. Boo-hoo. We're just gonna skip Final Fantasy XI because honestly, who cares, and there's too many things going on there. Final Fantasy XII sees us with Venat, Dr. Sid, and Vayne, who are all basically the same villain in that sense of they're all working towards the same goal and never have their own standout reasons for doing anything other than just being a bit naff. They all aim to put humanity's history back in control of humanity and not in the hands of the Akuria, who are these sort of godlike beings that somehow control humanity itself. Somehow, Venat is one of these as well, and he sort of rebels against his own kind, teaches Dr. Sid how to make fake magical rock, which is basically like fake coal or fake oil, in a means of taking back control. Vayne somehow goes insane and decides to conquer the entire world under a means of taking back control. All of it, all of these atrocities are all brushed under the carpet under the pretense of taking back control, which is a phrase that just doesn't really work, does it? Anyway, it's all a bit weird and vague and kind of dumb and never really has an actual purpose other than just being some bad guys. So, they're all kind of Sephiroth. Final Fantasy XIII sees us with Galanth Daisley, or Daisley Galanth, but handleless, a man who is all face, who is like the Primarch / president of Cocoon, the world that humans live in. Turns out his grand strategy is to manipulate mankind into killing mankind so that he may bring forth their vague sense of the Maker, their god, despite them being already godlike creatures. He is a fal'Cie, who are these godlike creatures. But you see, the Cocoon fal'Cie, the ones who live in this sort of golden globe, all believe that if enough people die all at once, then surely their god will take notice of them and come back. Which is it's actually pretty cool, because it's all about these sort of entities just trying to communicate and understand their higher purpose, their god, trying to understand why they left them and bring it back. And to be honest, it's kind of okay. Then we've got Final Fantasy XIII 2, which sees us with Caius Ballard, which is an incredible story that I'm about to explain. Caius Ballard is a guardian of the Cirrus Yule or something like that, who is a lady who can see into the future, but every time she looks into the future, her own life diminishes until she eventually sees into the future and will die, which is sad. However, Caius is also immortal because he was one day Etro, the goddess of chaos and life itself, gave him the heart of chaos, which means that he can never die. So he is now forever having to watch Yules, who keep on like reincarnating basically, watching them grow up, die by looking into the future, and then another one is born and he watches them grow up and then die, and then another one is born and then they grow up and then they die, and he has to watch this for thousands and thousands of years over time, it taking its toll on his mental state. So his plan is to go and find the goddess of chaos herself, of life and death, who lives in the underworld, a place he physically cannot go because he cannot die, to kill her in the hopes of like unleashing chaos itself into the world to stop time from progressing it entirely. Therefore, you will never like see into the future because time itself no longer exists. And it's pretty hot. He's driven insane by his curse of immortality to watch this one person he cares deeply for die over and over again. And it's kind of hot, even if he does get his way and leads to time stopping. Which brings us to Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII, where the main villain is Bunevelzer or something like that, who is literally the god of gods, of all gods, the god himself. His plan is confusing and weird. Time itself has come to a standstill. The world is f***ed. He's like, oh god, the world is f***ed. So his plan is to use lightning to try and work out which souls should be passed on to this new world he is building. However, he is scared of his mother, who he killed and then sent to the underworld at one point, and everything she stands for, or what Etro, who he made in her visage, stands for, which is like humanity, the sense of humanity and free will and emotions and everything like that. And in the English version of the game, his plan is to strip out the humanity from everyone, remove their emotions. Over time, he's just removing everything that could be considered free will, a taint on the perfect beings, which is bad because free will is good. It's kind of naff, he's kind of bad, he's a Sephi not. Because he's got mummy issues. Once again, skipping Final Fantasy XIV because it's another MMO. I don't care about it, you don't care about it, there's like 30 goddamn bosses for it. No. No. Which takes us to Final Fantasy XV, the most recent installment, where we have Arden Izunia, or Arden Lucius Lycaeum, whatever. He is the Chancellor of the evil kingdom of Niflheim, something along those lines. And he keeps on inciting war between the kingdoms of Lucis, which is the land where Noctis is from, and all in the idea of just bringing Lucis, the kingdom of, to ruin, because he hates them. Why? Because thousands of years ago, as many stories begin, he was a member of the Lucis royal family, and the crystal, the grand crystal, selected him as their chosen one to cure the world of the Star Scourge, which is like this plague of demons, this demon plague. The way he did it was that he could take that Star Scourge unto himself and cure people in the process. It was great, everyone was cured, everyone was healed, everyone had a good time. However, the gods then viewed Arden as this horrible, corrupted monster, tainted by the demon scourge that they gave him the ability to absorb himself. Oh no! So they ousted him from the line of kings in a sense, and he was greatly betrayed by his brother the next actual king, the chosen king who replaced him. Arden is an immortal and will walk the world for thousands of years, all trying to get his revenge on the gods themselves and the line of Lucis. So he is a man who is driven to do evil purely by his resentment for the gods themselves, the things he once worshipped, those who gave him his reason for living, and then scorned him and told him that he was wrong. And to be honest, Arden is kind of Sephiroth, even if his plan is to forcibly manipulate Noctis into becoming more powerful, into the chosen king, so that somehow he thinks that he can then defeat him at his most powerfulness to one-up the gods. It doesn't work out. He dies and is literally eviscerated from time and space itself. Whoops. But there you have it. Here's all the Sephiroths and the Sephiroths of Final Fantasy villains. What did we learn? That even slimming this list down, there's already far too many Final Fantasy villains to reasonably go through in any reasonable time. Also, that if you want to enact mass genocide, you do have to have at least some level of tragic and decent backstory that isn't just one day you woke up and you were evil. I'm looking at you, Garland, you idiot. Also, hopefully we can all agree that despite everything, Omnicide is bad and we shouldn't kill everyone, even if we are all dying slowly. Hi there, and thank you for watching my video. It was a lot longer than I thought it was, because there's a lot of Final Fantasy villains and I care about them greatly. If you want, you can check out this one. It'll be about something else probably, who knows. Or this one down here, where it's also something else. Otherwise, click on my face where there's a face orb to probably subscribe, and thank you and goodbye.